وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WZMV 700 AM.
I'm Atif Abdel Jawad reporting from Washington. Good morning. Egypt, already divided, is further fragmented over the acquittal of Hosni Mubarak, the president who gave up power in 18 days of popular uprising in early 2011. While violence still engulfs the country as a result of the confrontation between Islamists and the military, the verdict is seen by many as a death sentence, not only for the Egyptian uprising, but also for the so-called Arab Spring. So where Egypt is heading, how will that impact the Middle East that is already torn by war, terrorism, ethnic and religious strife, and by floods of refugees? To discuss these issues, I have with us three guests with first-hand experience and knowledge of the Egyptian and Arab scene. From Cairo, Ms. Shahira Amin, an award-winning Egyptian journalist. And from Washington, Ms. Amy Aqdawi, president of the Egyptian-American Alliance, and also from Washington, D.C., Dr. Nabil Mikhail, professor of political science at George Washington University. Before we begin our discussion, I would like to invite our audience to call in with questions or comments, and the number to call is 248-557-3300. That's 248-557-3300. To begin, I would like to hear from my three guests, one at a time, a response to the following question. I want to know what your reaction was when you first heard that Mr. Mubarak was acquitted of all the charges. And let's maybe begin with Ms. Shahira Amin in Cairo.
Good morning, Dr. Gawad. Well, I would say that the verdict was expected by some because there were already signs that the counter-revolution is on. And so, although it didn't come as a surprise to some, it was for me personally a shock. And as you very rightly said, it does spell the last nail in the coffin of the Egyptian revolution and the demise of the Arab Spring. That became official on that day when we heard the verdict. Very sad indeed. Because it sets a precedent for impunity that doesn't bode well for Egypt's future. This lack of accountability doesn't bode well.
Okay, let's see what Dr. Nabil Mikhail's reaction was.
It was actually a little bit of a surprise. I was more surprised to know that the police chiefs were acquitted. Mubarak actually was not a central figure because he, was not in the, reacting to the street demonstrators or protests directly. So you could expect also some acquittal, and that happened. The only thing is that I just do not like to say, okay, this is over. It's not over yet because basically even with the decisions made by the court, it's along the political and judicial process. It's still going on. So I think the government, the opposition are reacting differently, and there will be different political situations. I said it's not a return to the old Mubarak regime, and it's not a new revolution either. So it is a situation that is a midpoint between two extremes. I expect that there will be future trials, and some of the police chiefs, the top officials with the Ministry of Interior, will receive some sentences, including Habib al-Adli, the former Interior Minister. I think also that Mubarak's children, Ala and Gamal, will receive also long prison terms. I do not know. I think there was some rationale beyond the acquittal of Mubarak that the government does not want him to die in prison. I do not know for how long he will live, but I think his case was the least contentious. Other defendants will receive some punishment.
And Ms. Amy Akhdawi in Washington, what do you think?
Hi, good morning, Atif. Actually, I wasn't surprised at all at the verdict because it was expected, and all the signs before the verdict were leading towards it. All other who were involved were also acquitted. What I was surprised at is the long speech that was done or presented by the judge, and he made some very political statement that it's not the place of the judge to make. Like he was making the case that this revolution is a conspiracy led by the Muslim Brotherhood and the U.S., and this was a real surprise for me because this is not his role to make this statement, and I don't know how he was able to do it. But the verdict was itself, I was expecting it.
What is a bit surprising, I think, is that Mr. Mubarak himself was acquitted on procedural questions, but the other defendants, his interior minister and his friend, the fugitive in Spain, and his two sons, there were no procedural issues there. They were just criminally acquitted. But Nabil, some people say the acquittal of Mr. Mubarak is the death sentence not just for Egypt's 2011 uprising, but also for the entire so-called Arab Spring. What do you think about that?
It is actually not the right statement to make. Like, say, if you apply the rule of logic, this is illogical because, for one, there are different reasons for the happening of the uprisings in countries like Libya, Tunisia, and others. And some of, like, for instance, Gaddafi's children are still being prosecuted, so he could receive death sentences. So you cannot just say that the Arab Spring ended because of the acquittal of Mubarak. There is no relationship between the acquittal of Mubarak and what's happening in Tunisia, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Syria, what's happening in other countries. For Egypt, actually, the revolution ended a long time ago because it's not a conspiracy, and I salute Amy for her intelligent remarks. Not a conspiracy. It ended a long time ago because basically it was recognized early on, even before the election of 2012, that just the demonstrators could not go too far in changing the system. It is basically the nature of the uprising itself led to an early self-determination of it. But at the same time, as I said, it's not the return to the old Mubarak regime. It's not the, the acceleration toward another revolution. It's just a new phase in the government of Egypt. If you'd like me to use an analogy, I would say that Egypt now looks like Russia under Putin. There are elements of authoritarianism, but it's not the old return to Yeltsin with its corruption, not the old return to communism with its dictatorship. So there are tons of people who accuse, who do not like Putin and criticize him. So this is the case of Egypt. Authoritarianism is being restored, but at the same time there is a great deal of freedom. People criticize the government, people criticize Al-Sisi. So it is an improvement, a good situation. So Egypt can do well. They have to do well economically. They have to do well in terms of employment and things like that. So Egypt and Russia actually look to me the same. They are trying to be self-assertive. They have unique historical phases in their history, and things are going on and moving on.
Shahira in Cairo, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I beg to differ that things are moving on because the instability continues, the political turmoil continues. Almost every other day we see terror attacks, and when we have instability, then it's very difficult to have economic stability. The investors have turned away, and tourists are not coming back for now. Because there is a fear, that there is no security on the streets. So as long as this continues, then I don't see how we can be moving on for the moment.
Amy, some people believe that trying Mr. Mubarak was a waste of Egyptian resources, time, and efforts in the first place. And one of those people was the late Nelson Mandela.
Actually, I also want to say that I agree with Shahira. I don't see Egypt moving forward. I see Egypt going backwards. And there is no, corruption is still the same, instability is there, more terrorist attacks, and even more now cracks down on civil society organizations and any talk about human rights. And even the word human rights became now criminalized in Egypt. If I say I work on anything related to human rights, it's better for me to say I'm a prostitute, maybe, a drug dealer, but I cannot say I work for anything related to human rights. I will be attacked bitterly in Egypt. So I don't see Egypt moving forward under those circumstances. I also don't think this is the death of the revolution. The revolution is a movement that can take years and years. And it's wrong to just measure the success of the revolution on the success of at the political level. It's more important for me is the social movement. The revolution was successful in breaking many taboos, to talk about many things that people before wouldn't dare to talk about. And this is what we need now, because as we stand now, our society could only produce two movements who are competing for power, the Muslim Brotherhood and the military rules, and both of them are based on the obedience ideology. So unless we have the social revolution first, we will not produce any better. So, and I see this movement is still going on the ground.
Well, some people say that the uprising or revolution resulted in just the removal of former President Mubarak, and nothing really else. Nothing happened. Egypt still doesn't even have a parliament, or doesn't have the kind of freedoms that the revolution or uprising, the young people who led the revolution, had demanded.
Yes.
Amy, yes.
This is why I said at the beginning that maybe it's not right to measure at the very immediate political results, but at the social level, the revolution as a movement is still going on, breaking taboos every day, and this is what I see the promising sign in this society. And unless we continue with the social movement breaking all the taboos, we will not realize anything at the political level also.
We'll be back after the break.
Betsy's Bridal and Formal, Michigan's largest selection of special occasion dresses. Exclusive bridal and cocktail fashions for formal engagements, proms, showers, pageants, mother of the bride and groom, and full bridal wear. Sizes 6 through 30. Betsy's has over 33 years in the bridal business. We promise you the best quality service and alterations. Betsy's Bridal and Formal is located at 6189 Haggerty Road in West Bloomfield. Call 248-669-9999. That's 248-669-9999. It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
I am Asif Abdul Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to our discussion of the situation in Egypt and its impact on the so-called Arab Spring. We have three guests from Cairo, Ms. Shahira Amin, an award-winning Egyptian journalist, and from Washington, Ms. Amy Aqdawi, president of the Egyptian-American Alliance, and also from Washington, D.C., Dr. Nabil Mikhail, professor of political science at George Washington University. Before we resume our discussion, I would like to invite our audience to call in with questions or comments, and the number to call is 248-557-3300. Let me go now to our guest in Cairo, Ms. Shahira Amin. After several days of the court ruling now, Shahira, how do you describe the feelings of most Egyptians?
Well, the verdict was met with mixed reactions here. Mubarak supporters and cronies, former regime loyalists, were out on the streets celebrating. We actually saw Mr. Mubarak look out from his balcony window and wave, and there were supporters down there outside the military hospital cheering and dancing. But then that same evening, Saturday evening, there were protests in Abdelminam Riyadh and in Tahrir Square. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets to denounce the verdict. And today, the April 6th group has also called for protests, and the Islamists as well. They want to form an alliance with the so-called secular activists, the young opposition activists. But as you know, there is a rift between the Muslim Brotherhood and the young revolutionaries who will not join forces with the Muslim Brotherhood for now. But protests have continued throughout the week at universities, and that's in defiance of a protest law that has been in place since last year, banning any street demonstrations without prior permission from the Interior Ministry. So the youth are out there protesting and, saying that they reject this verdict.
Nabil, some people say that the latest verdict is politicized. So was the first verdict that had sent Mr. Mubarak to jail for life. Is the Egyptian judiciary politicized?
Any judiciary is politicized, even in America, but also there is an element of independence because the Egyptian judiciary is privileged. It's an institution. It is basically a multi-layer apparatus. They are sensitive and they measure the political atmosphere. It's not a case of what you can call in the United States judicial activism. Like, for instance, here in America, we have the question of gay marriage. So the judges are trying to be active to liberalize gay marriage. So definitely there is an element of politics. But at the same time, the Egyptian judiciary is trying to steer the course to some sort of a middle-of-the-road thing. Yes, there could be shortcomings, but also it's not negligence of justice. So again, as I said, things are going on. Things are moving on. There's an improvement. Like say within, a week or so, the Egyptian government was able to raise over $60 billion Egyptian pounds to support or to issue government bonds for the new expansion of the Suez Canal. There is more accountability. There is actually a great improvement in the relationship between Copts and Muslims. There is a mood of confidence, and the expatriate community is helping. So it's a process. So the judiciary is there. There are some shortcomings, some mistakes, but overall, it is performing well, and I will not expect too much from it. But it is doing a good job so far.
Some people say that the prosecution, Egyptian prosecution particularly, is politicized and is susceptible to getting direct instructions from the political authority. And one evidence they provide is the fact that the prosecution, did not do a good work in providing thorough evidence in the Mubarak case. Nabil?
I mean, there was evidence. There was actually, say, the whole question of killings, and there is a discussion now about compensating those who were killed. Like, say, I suggested in an interview with a different station that there should be some sort of a statement. How many people were killed, the circumstances of their death, who is held accountable. There is one theory that even the Western press covered a little bit, which is that they are trying also to run the full account so the Islamists could be also held accountable. Okay, if you are trying to balance the sheets, that's fine. But you have to render justice, either through what is happening in South Africa when there was a commission to redeem the truth about the killing, the torture, the kidnapping, the detention. So just try to quantify the problem and qualify it. How many people were killed? How many people were injured? Who's responsible for it? This is something I said to many of my American friends and colleagues and students, is that do not apply the Iranian model, the Iranian revolution model to Egypt. It's just totally different. In Iran back in 1979, as soon as the Shah was toppled, you had basically a very forceful process of vengeful and justice. It seems to me that the Egyptian judiciary, and this is also something we share with the ruling authorities, are very much reluctant to pass death sentences. So even for, say, people accusing of shooting, there will be some injustice, but at the same time try to contain the problem, so see how many people killed, how many people injured, who's responsible for it, and redeem it, either administratively or through the court. So it could be resolved. Everything could be resolved. Everything is resolvable. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, did Asif listen to me?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Amy, I'm here.
I think there's a problem with Dr. Jawad's networking, so we're going to get quick commercial break. We will be back with our guest.
Life for Relief and Development is a nonprofit charity that has been providing humanitarian aid and development to people and communities regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background for over 22 years. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life rushes to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Life also has development projects that provide medical relief, water purification, educational programs, relief for orphans, and much more. Your help and support can greatly improve these efforts. All donations are tax deductible. For more information, please visit our website at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's lifeusa.org, 248-424-7493. Dr. Opada Al-Zuhaili is a diabetes and endocrinology specialist with over 12 years of experience in medical research dealing with diabetes patients. Dr. Zuhaili lectures in many American and Arab universities about the latest research and studies related to diabetes. Al-Zuhaili Medical Centers are fully equipped to provide you with the best in medical treatment. Whether Arabic or English, our staff of medical professionals speak your language and can provide for your comfort and care. You're always welcome at Al-Zuhaili Medical Centers. Please visit our Southfield location at 27207 Losser Road, and for appointments call 248-809-5988. That's 248-809-5988. It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are waiting for Dr. Jawad to call us back, and we welcome our guest from Egypt, Mrs. Shahira Amin, and also we have online Mrs. Amy and Dr. Mikhail continuing the topic today. Mrs. Amin, I'm sorry, I'm going to take over until we're going to find what was the problem with Dr. Jawad, and hopefully he's going to call us back. Mrs. Amin, I would like to ask you the impact on the Egyptian young revolutionaries. So what is the impact in your opinion?
Most of them are shocked at the verdict, Layla, and they've taken to the streets, as I said earlier, protesting the acquittal of Mubarak. I also want to make some comments to respond to Dr. Mikhail about the independence of the Egyptian judiciary. I just want to remind him that many of the icons of the January 2011 revolution are now behind bars for protesting in defiance of the protest law. They've been handed down sentences of between 3 to 15 years in prison for merely protesting, while we see Mubarak, his interior ministry, his interior minister, and 6 top aides acquitted over mass murder. And also I want to mention the mass death sentences for President Morsi's supporters. Just this week, after Mubarak's acquittal, 188 people were sentenced to death for the killing of 13 policemen in the Kardassa violence incidents. And these are not the first mass death sentences passed down. Earlier this year, we had over 1,000 people sentenced to death in similar incidents.
I think we have Dr. Jawad back with us. Dr. Jawad?
Yes, I'm sorry. I had an internet problem, so we do have internet problems here in the U.S. too. I don't know where you were, guys, but I thought that maybe my next question should go to Ms. Amy Abdawi. Do you think, Amy, I want to jump several months from now. Do you think that the upcoming Egyptian parliament will be truly democratic, or will it be a Mubarak-style parliament?
Okay. Before answering this, I just also want to comment on Dr. Mikhail on the judiciary system. Don't forget that the judge made a political statement. This is not his role. And if we are speaking about an independent judiciary system, he shouldn't be making a political statement that long before announcing the rules. So it's very politicized. I dare to disagree. So it's this political statement he made is a proof that it is politicized. But going back to your question about the parliamentary elections, I'm not sure even if we will have elections or not. We are hearing, and maybe Shahira, because she's in Egypt, she would know better than me, but we are hearing different statements now about should we postpone it or not, and we are in the war on terror, and it's not the time. I don't know if we were going to have it or not in March as promised. But as far as I see for now, there are two very strong groups who can have a lot of votes, especially in Upper Egypt and in the rural areas outside of Cairo, are still the Muslim Brotherhood and still the old guard of the regime. Yes, there are many independents now who are trying to do something, but still it's not enough time for them. They didn't have enough time or capacity to do the same thing that others were doing for years now to build this constituency. So I don't have any hope with this coming parliament.
We'll be back after the break.
Jumana Kayruz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Jumana Kayruz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Jumana Kayruz.
Most people who sit in my office across from my desk are hurting on so many levels. One thing people do not know about medical malpractice is that the statute of limitation, meaning the time that you have to bring suit against a doctor, a hospital, is 2 years. In medical malpractice, that's a very, very short period of time. Not every lawyer is an advocate, but every lawyer should be an advocate.
Let Jumana Kayruz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Jumana Kayruz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East, live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNVK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to our discussion. on the situation in Egypt and its impact on the Middle East. We have three distinguished guests from Cairo. We have Ms. Shahira Amin, an award-winning Egyptian journalist. We also have from Washington, D.C., Ms. Amy Afdawi, president of the Egyptian-American Alliance. And from Washington also we have Dr. Nabil Mikhail, professor of political science at George Washington University. And before we resume our discussion, I would like to remind our audience that they can call us with comments or questions. The number to call is 248-557-3300. That's 248-557-3300. And let's go to Ms. Shahira Amin in Cairo now. This is a tough question, sort of. There is a great deal of concern over restrictions imposed on free speech in Egypt. Are these restrictions self-imposed by corrupt journalists, or are they government-imposed?
I would say a mix of both, Dr. Jawad. Right from the beginning, since the military takeover of the country, there was a clear message that there is zero tolerance for dissent. Right now in Egypt, we have 11 journalists imprisoned for no other crime than doing their work. Three of them, the Al Jazeera English journalists, who have been accused of aiding a terror group and jeopardizing the national security of Egypt by fabricating lies. And there was no evidence at all against them. I attended all the court sessions. We were shown videos of family holidays, of a press conference in Nairobi that had nothing to do with the case at all. And they've been sentenced to between 7 to 10 years in prison for just doing their job. So all of this has sent a very clear message. And many of the journalists in Egypt are practicing self-censorship because of fear they would lose favor with the regime, or they would lose their jobs, or even their own lives would be at risk. So this crackdown, massive crackdown on opposition of all stripes, including journalists, has reinstated the fear. I agree with Miss Amy, who said that the fear barrier was broken during the revolution, but this regime has been trying to reinstate the fear, and I'm afraid they've succeeded with anyone who has a different view from the official state narrative now being labeled a traitor or a foreign agent and a spy.
Shahira, I wanted to ask you about your personal experience as a journalist amid that environment.
It's very difficult for me to work locally. I contribute to Index on Censorship, a free expression portal based in the UK. It's very difficult for me to get stories published in Egypt. I have to admit that this is a very dangerous time for journalists in Egypt, because we also get attacked by mobs on the street who accuse us of being spies and foreign agents. I was just subjected to an attack last week myself, walking on the street, when one woman called out saying I was a spy. And that's simply because you try and tell all sides of the story. There is just one narrative now adopted in all the media outlets in Egypt, and it's the official state narrative.
Why did she think? Why did that person think you were foreign? You were a spy? Do you look foreign?
I don't look foreign at all. I look very Egyptian, but 8 local websites have launched this smear campaign. Any journalist that tries to express, all sides of the story, is immediately subjected to this kind of smear campaign to tarnish their reputation and image.
Another point I want to raise with Dr. Nabil Mikhail. Nabil, most Egyptian Copts were never happy with Mr. Mubarak. What makes Pope Tawadros supportive of the new al-Sisi government, if that's the case?
Because it's a better alternative to the reign of the Ikhwan. And this is something very obvious. I mean, it does not really entail too much discussion. But I just would like to make one comment on human rights, because this is a bigger concern. All of us, of course, are supportive of human rights, but America does not support human rights. Part of your audience also is Egyptian and American. Look at what happened 2 weeks ago. Chuck Hagel as defense secretary quit because he wanted to expand the campaign against Syria. So America now is in alliance with Syria, and Syria is committing atrocities, not just human rights concerns. So yes, there are violations of human rights in Egypt. I want the record to be better, but at the same time, you'll find America tuned only to a level of human rights respect. So it's not that bad. Yes, there are many drawbacks, there are many omissions, but you have to realize that America is in the picture. There are all these conspiracy theories which can be dismissed. So things are still going on. Human rights activists can articulate their message, and eventually for the Egyptians to improve, there will be more respect for human rights and less fear by the cops and others.
Ms. Amy Akdawi, President al-Sisi was an army general who followed three previous generals, Mr. Mubarak, Mr. Sadat, and Mr. Nasser. What does that say about Egypt's future?
Can I just mention something about the human rights activists?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I have friends who were in their way to the airport to fly to Geneva to attend the UPR meetings, the human rights thing in Geneva. And many of them, individually, they received threat calls from the security asking them to go back home to raise their kids. And they had to go back home. They didn't fly. And they boycotted because of this. So I don't see how Egypt is improving with human rights now. This didn't even happen during Mubarak.
But Amy, you also, as an Egyptian American, prominent Egyptian American here in the U.S., you also probably aware of the widespread accusation against Egyptian Americans in Egypt that we are or they are either agents or traitors, or they suspect their loyalty to their motherland.
Exactly. I am accused by many of my relatives of being a spy because I work for an NGO who my work is related to human rights. So I'm an NGO based in the U.S., and I work on Egypt and many other Arab countries, and I work on anything related to human rights. So even my family who know me very well, they accuse me of like either being naive enough, who was like recruited by the CIA. So this conspiracy theory is really bad, and it's against any human rights, and it wasn't even there during Mubarak. So I don't see how Egypt is moving forward with this. It's moving backward, really running backward, not just moving. But back to your question about the military rule. For now, as I mentioned before, I see something wrong with the value system that we have in Egypt. The value system that we have in Egypt, it gives much weight to obedience. And this is what we see with the two groups who were competing recently over power. It's either the military or the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are all based on the ideology of obedience. And there is this very interesting study done by Professor Angel Hart in Indiana University, analyzing the value system of the different societies around the world and trying to find the correlation between those values and the political system. And he found that whenever obedience is the highest appreciated value. This is where there is more authoritarian regimes. And you can really reflect this on Egypt. This is how we raise our kids. You have to obey, and this is how we raise them in school. You have just to memorize what's in the book. You don't have to think different. So it's all about obedience, obedience, obedience. And that's why I see at least some hope when we are now with the new generation trying to break the taboos of obedience and questioning things. But this will take time. That change will not happen because it's a social change that we need now. It's not about the immediate political change that we need. So until this will happen, we will go through lots of military regimes. It will be military and MB, Muslim Brotherhood again, and military again, and it will be in turmoil for a long time until we finally would stabilize.
Well, let's see. We have two callers. Let's take the callers, our friends. Introduce yourself, sir, or madam, and go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Jawad. Thanks for taking my call. My question is to either one of your distinguished guests, and it is on January 25th, 2011, there was a revolution that toppled Mubarak and so-called regime, but the regime had three branches, or I would say four branches. You have the judicial, legislative, executive branch, which is Mubarak, and then you still have the side-by-side military regime. So what I think is just the legislative branch and the executive branch were pretty much toppled during the 25th revolution. I would say why the judicial branch was never, quote-unquote, cleaned up during the revolution. Do you think it needs reform? Why is still the same judges were at the time of Mubarak still around same time? They're still in power pretty much. So nothing really changed in the judicial part of the system, which is the most important, I would think. Thanks.
Okay, maybe Shahira would like to take that question.
I would very much agree with the caller because there has been no purging, not just of the judiciary, but of any state institution in Egypt since the revolution. No reforms as yet, no reforms of the police force, of the media, of the judiciary, and this remains a problem because this is what should have happened right after the uprising that toppled Mubarak. And there has been resistance to any kind of change. In fact, the judges that called for reforms within the judiciary have been laid off. They have been dismissed, given early pension. And the ones that remain are those that have close links or are willing to coordinate with the authorities. This is the situation in Egypt right now. And I just want to add that there is this deep yearning for security and stability. Egyptians are tired after these 4 years of turmoil, and they have chosen to prioritize stability and security over democracy and human rights because of the fact that they are weary because of the dire economic situation. Many families are struggling to put food on the table for their children. And so they want to forget about freedom, about democracy, and they just want some kind of state of normalcy to return to their lives.
We have a second caller. Can we take it? Can we take the second call?
Dr. Atif Abdel Jawad. Good morning to you, sir. Najib Habba. Thank you for taking my call. Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Najib.
Dr. Atif Abdel Jawad, thank you for taking my call, and I salute you and Sayyida Layla Al-Husseini. In the meantime, I salute Ms. Shahira, Ms. Amy, Dr. Nabil. Dr. Jawad, The president of the United States a few years ago, when bad economy recession in the USA, he bailed out two giant car company, the GM, as you know, and the Chrysler, and he saved them from the bankrupt. I want to put Egypt in the same catalog. Egypt, with a bad economy, is almost facing bankrupt. I address it to you in three terms, Dr. ABC. A, I believe former President Hosni Mubarak, his billions of dollars that he got, bail him out. B, if that money was a pre-bargain between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Justice Department to bail out Hosni Mubarak and his team, if that money go to the Egyptian people, to the Egypt Treasury, this is a blessing. C, if the money go, as we know, from Peter to Paul, we didn't do nothing. I want an answer from the guest, and thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you. I guess, Ms. Abdawi, would you like to take that question?
Yes, of course, we all know that Egypt is facing economic problems right now, and we can just see the dollar value there is increasing like crazy these days. But I don't think it's only about the bailout, Mr. Mubarak, that will solve the problem. There are many things that should be done to solve the problem. If you also see at the economic empire run by the military in Egypt, and yes, it can provide cheap goods for people, but this is very short run because it's also competing with private sector that we need now for more sustainable economic growth. So there are many problems with the economic model. And even speaking with this new Suez Canal things, okay, it might be good, it might be bad, I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on this, but we haven't seen any study, any feasibility study for this. So even whenever you decide to renew your home and to to build a new wall, you bring an engineer to do the study to see how this will affect the basement, the base of your house, if this will really endanger your house or not. But we didn't do any environmental assessment to see how this will affect the environment. I don't mean by environment, even not the pollution, but even how this will go with the ground and all those type of things. We haven't seen it. It's just and it's ridiculous to do this big project without a feasibility study to start with. So there are many big economic problems that are just now, we are trying to look at the very short-term solutions, how to pump money now, but look at the sustainability of those solutions. And this is really wrong, and this will not solve any problem now.
We have Sam on the line waiting. Go ahead, Sam.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sir.
I've been in Egypt many times. Egypt is too many people. Poor country. My opinion, when Hosni Mubarak, he went to the court, and the court, he say, guilty, he's guilty. When the court, he say, is not guilty, he is not guilty. That's the law about. When everybody want put himself, a judge, why you got a court over there? I salute Hosni Mubarak. He is a hero, but he can do anything because too many people. What you want to do? Thank you, and God bless everybody.
Dr. Nabil Mikhail, any comment?
No, I think he's someone who likes Mubarak, but Amy raised a good point in the answer to the previous question about feasibility study. My guess is the following, that there have been many feasibility studies before, and the focus on the question of giant oil tankers. So the calculation was the following, that the canal could generate an extra revenue if they accommodate the big oil tankers. But you have now a slump in oil prices, so that could be a challenge. So it's going to happen, but it will not generate the expected revenue. But at the same time, it's an important infrastructure. So again, it is like, say, the trial and error logic in Egyptian and Arab politics and why. You have a great deal of enthusiasm, you establish a concept, an idea, a project. It does not perform perfectly, but it's there, and gradually it evolves into something that could be useful. So also management and administration are factors. So I think it is one good step, and hopefully you can maximize the advantage of.
Shahira, yes, go ahead.
I just have a few last words. The caller who just called, Sam, saying that there should be no comment on court decisions. Well, he shares President Sisi's opinion. President Sisi has repeatedly reminded us not to comment on judicial decisions, and he's gone a step further, saying that he will issue a decree criminalizing any insults of the two revolutions, January 2011 and June 30th. And for me, I just want to say that there will be no stability, no economic stability, as long as the injustice continues. And I think that a real effort has to be made at reconciliation to unite all factions in the society. This is the only way forward for Egypt.
Okay, I want to ask the three of you at concluding the show one question. And despite his grave shortcomings, Mr. Mubarak built Egypt's infrastructure from scratch, highways, telecommunications. He also is a hero of the 1973 war. But most Egyptians tend to make judgments in black and white. Now, the question is, why can't they take a fair and balanced look at his record? I want to take your view on this briefly, and let's start with Amy.
Okay, I guess it's also something in our culture that we always take position white or black. We don't recognize the gray area, even though the gray area is the biggest area in the spectrum. I recognize that Mubarak has done some things, but also he didn't done everything that he could have done. And speaking of infrastructure, you have to go to Upper Egypt to see the infrastructure there. So Egypt is not only Cairo. So yes, he has done a lot of bridges in Cairo, but go to Upper Egypt. I would invite you to go to Upper Egypt. I have worked in Upper Egypt for many years under Mubarak, when Mubarak was there. And also, speaking of Egypt, many person, how could he serve all of them? I understand it's a big country, but you have many other examples with big countries who have done much, much better than this. And look, it's a big country, but yes, he realized economic growth. And because I work on the World Bank, not with the World Bank, so I know that the economic growth was really high digits during Mubarak. But again, look at the equity of the distribution of wealth that happened during Mubarak, and the gap between the poor and richer during Mubarak. And this is something that really documented. It's not just judgments. And you just look at the middle class that doesn't exist anymore now.
Okay, I have 1 minute left, and I would like to hear a brief comment from both our guests, Nabil and Shahira. Let's go, Nabil first.
About the very same question.
The question is, why can't the Egyptian take a fair look, balanced look at Mr. Mubarak's record?
Okay, I mean, like say, they are actually. I mean, it's not just people in Egypt who look into black and white lenses. No, that's typical of everyone. Look, Stalin was not prosecuted for his crime. Nasser was never put on trial for his mistakes in the 1967 war. So the trial of a president also could be politicized. But for me, I will just borrow an example from the academia. Most Egyptians treat Mubarak as the C- student. He got a couple of A's, but he failed was very mediocre in most of the academic performance. So this is the view we hold of him. He had a very, very poor record, but still he was able to graduate. So he will survive his legacy and again things will move on.
Okay, your final word for you, Shahira from Cairo.
I see you've run out of time, so I'll be very brief. I'll just say that history will judge President Mubarak. He had some achievements. He built roads and bridges in Egypt, but he also let our health and education system deteriorate. The human